An Afrikaans and Jewish alliance. Although life is extremely hard for many black South Africans, many of them are making greater progress than they give themselves credit for. And many have mastered a number of skilled trades and are showing abilities that are as good as any in the world. And if they keep developing in this way, then many of them will eventually advance to professional and business levels equal to any in the world. But in order to get there, the rapidly advancing black South Africans need a reliable flow of work. And this can come only from confident investors who need to be convinced that South Africa is stable and predictable before they risk any money. Of course, now that the ANC has announced its intention to grab private property, this investor confidence has been badly shaken, and the ANC has to be stopped in its tracks. And the only way to do this is by a show of brute force, which is the only language they understand. Now, Afrikaners and Jewish South Africans should realize that the Western world cannot and will not help us. The Western world is reeling before an enormous leftist onslaught and desperately needs firm and decisive leadership. And if we can provide that sort of leadership, then we will receive overwhelming support from hundreds of millions of people who are worried sick about the total collapse of moral fiber throughout the Western world. Forget about the United Nations and forget about the gutless and corrupt international councils and their so-called international law. These things are nothing but rubbish that has found its way into Judeo-Christian thinking. What Afrikaners and Jews need to do is to think about God, duty, and what we have to do in order to stabilize this country and prevent it from falling into wholesale savagery. We need to show clear and visible defensive capabilities, and we need to leave no doubt that we are prepared to use that defensive capability. Now, we also have to show that we have no selfish intentions or any intention to try to regain political power in South Africa. We'll be acting for peace, safety, and civilized conduct, and to defend the precious opportunities for advancement of tens of millions of our fellow South Africans. We can't allow the ground to crumble under their feet because the government is falling to pieces. There are thousands of wise and godly people of all races in South Africa who can do a much better job of advancing this nation than the ANC or EFF could ever do. So let's make sure that these wise and godly people get their chance. Bloodshed and chaos was not the deal we made in 1994, and we cannot allow it to start now. Recently, a member of the Australian government expressed himself in favour of helping South African farmer refugees, which caused a tremendous panic amongst Australian leftists and an even bigger panic amongst the ANC. The ANC is panicking because the Australian concern for South African refugees is showing up the lawless and primitive nature of both the ANC and the EFF, who are revealing to the world that they are capable of anything. And you'll notice that this ANC panic has been bigger than anything any Afrikaner organization has been able to cause in 20 years by appealing to legalities and useless international bodies. The ANC remains convinced that it has as much worldwide support as it had when apartheid was the central obsession of the international left. But the ANC is wrong. The ANC is wrong because since 1994, tens of millions of decent people have seen for themselves the horror and misery that savage and tyrannical governments can inflict. Zimbabwe and Venezuela are just two of many, many such examples. And the hysterical leftist support for these tyrannical savage governments does not carry the same weight as it did in the old days of apartheid. And if the world sees one of these left-supported socialist regimes being overpowered, then a great many decent and concerned people all over the world will be greatly encouraged. And it will be the beginning of an end of the tyrant regimes, including the ANC, that have ruined so many lives for so long. Now is the time for us to prepare clear and credible military power, and to show that we'll use it if we have to. When Israel acted in this manner in 1967, the world reacted with admiration and support. And there was very little opposition from any quarter, and the leftists were as quiet as mice. If we do the same, we'll receive worldwide support and appreciation from everyone who can see how the leftists are driving the Western world to hell in a handbasket. We have a great many more friends than we think, provided we use our brains and use the many weapons we have. So this is Paul Kaplan signing out and thanking you for your time and attention. And while you're about it, get yourself a copy of God versus the Left, which is the book that lays out the Jewish agenda in the near future, and the Afrikaans and Jewish Alliance is part of this agenda. So this is Paul Kaplan signing out and thanking you for your time and attention.